What's up guys, Kevin Cage here with another crypto update. Hope everyone's doing well and I hope you enjoyed today's video. We're going to dive into Bitcoin today, its price chart, compare its previous cycles, discuss the Bitcoin halving and also measure those cycle lengths, open gaps, tokenomics, and what I personally need to see before I can confidently call for an all-time high price. I'll show some of my primary considerations that I'm looking at today, and I encourage everybody to question everything I share. Nobody knows the exact future, and markets move in probability, so it's important to remember that anything is possible. It takes one black swan or one positive piece of news to completely change the narrative. And remember that I'm incredibly biased because 1, I hold crypto, 2, I want all-time highs, I'm tired of this bear market, and 3, I make videos. So I'll do my best to review both the bullish and the bearish side just so we can go over as much information as possible. And Bitcoin is currently in a key zone on the price chart where it truly is make or break, either going into all-time highs or we're going to see a big rejection. And it's crazy to think just 1 year ago today, in January of 2023, Bitcoin is around 16,500. And it's great to see that Bitcoin has shown signs of life, but there are a variety of alts still sitting in accumulation near their lows. So we're going to dive into a bunch today. Huge thank you to all that stick around. This is going to be a lot. So first up, understanding Bitcoin's tokenomics, its current circulating supply, and its max supply. We're expecting the 4th Bitcoin halving sometime in April of this year, so roughly 100 days, where Bitcoin's mining reward will be cut in half from 6.25 Bitcoin into 3.125 per block. And the Bitcoin halvings are not determined by a specific date. A Bitcoin halving actually occurs every 210,000 blocks. And the time frame between each halving event can vary based off of the mining activity during that time. So let's take a look at Bitcoin's price per its current circulating supply today at different market caps and what it has done in the past. So while I'm recording this video, Bitcoin is currently bouncing between 45,000 to 47K, with a market cap close to 900 billion. Its all-time high market capitalization was approximately 1.29 trillion. If Bitcoin reached that market cap today with its current circulating supply, that would be about $65,900. A $20,000 Bitcoin would be a $400 billion market cap. At Ethereum's all-time high market cap of 570 billion, Bitcoin would be roughly 29,000. So Bitcoin's previous all-time high price was over $1 trillion at 1.29 trillion. At 1.5 or 1.5 trillion, that is a $76,000 BTC. At a $2 trillion market cap, that is Bitcoin just over 100,000. And for perspective, at a $3 trillion market cap, Bitcoin would be roughly 150,000. So every $1 trillion in market cap is basically $50,000 for the Bitcoin price. Now, $3 trillion is the all-time high market cap of the entire crypto asset class: Bitcoin, Ethereum, and every single altcoin and stablecoin. So that's something to consider. We also had Tim Draper this year say that he believes Bitcoin will hit 250K in 2024. So I added that just to show what the market cap would be. That would require a $5 trillion market cap for Bitcoin. I'm very skeptical in a single cycle. And looking back at the 2018 cycle low for Bitcoin, Bitcoin was roughly $3,200. A $3,200 Bitcoin would be a $63 billion market cap. So I wanted to highlight the Bitcoin price at a variety of market caps, even what we recently saw when Bitcoin was down to 16,000. Most of these large liquidations, sometimes even black swans like March 2020, are bought up and there's a strong V-shaped recovery. So I'm absolutely rooting for an all-time high price for Bitcoin, but I don't know if it's going to be 2024, 2025, or even push back later. And we're going to look at the past few cycles and compare from the cycle low to the cycle top. How long did it take? From the cycle high to the next cycle high, how long did it take? And how long did it take for each Bitcoin halving until the next cycle top? When looking at that, it absolutely makes sense for an all-time high price for the Bitcoin price chart either this year or next year. We have a variety of estimates from organizations like Swift, BCG, and the WEF. This is highlighting tokenized assets. By some estimates, volumes could reach $24 trillion by 2027. We have Medico, the growing institutional crypto custody market, expected to reach $10 trillion by 2030. And even BCG's report highlighting the tokenization of globally illiquid assets being a $16 trillion business opportunity with the highest potential of $68 trillion, with the total tokenized market to be 10% of global GDP. We have more regulatory bodies moving forward like Markets and Crypto Assets Regulation, or MICA, in the European Union, and they should be gearing up in 2024. And so the big question is, will the crypto asset class succeed in becoming a major asset class, and how long will that take? There are a variety of other asset classes, markets, even funds that are being tokenized today. The global stock market is over 100 trillion, global bonds over 100 trillion, real estate hundreds of trillions, and global derivatives even more. So while crypto today is sitting around 1.6 or 1.7 trillion and its all-time high was 3 trillion, the question is, will it create another high? I personally think that 5 trillion, maybe 8 trillion, or even 10 trillion eventually is realistic. And I know there's a lot of people that strongly believe that Bitcoin hits $1 million. It's possible, but I'm pretty skeptical per the market cap that it would require. For a $1 million Bitcoin, that would require roughly a $20 trillion market cap in a single asset. And don't get me wrong, there are very smart and very successful people that believe Bitcoin hits $1 million. I understand the store value narrative and the benefit that Bitcoin brings, but I just feel that there might be new technology that comes in the future. When we think about the S&P 500, the top 500 companies are over a $30 trillion market cap. Apple, one of the largest companies in the world, hit a market cap of $3 trillion, which is the all-time high of the entire crypto asset class. And I'm not going to say it can't happen, but right now I'm very, very skeptical, but anything's possible. I believe with clear regulatory frameworks that we're seeing other countries already implement, we would finally have a chance to see utility-based assets and protocols perform well and decouple from Bitcoin to a certain degree. I know a lot of Bitcoin was lost, so we shouldn't necessarily use the total supply right there of 21 million. I personally think there's going to be a couple dozen primary chains that have much higher success than Bitcoin and a much higher rate of return. As real-world assets and tokenization, ZK proofs, scaling solutions, AI, data, gaming, all of these are developed. But the hardest part and the scariest part is picking the right one when you could just hold Bitcoin and probably have a safer rate of return over the long term. Now, the crypto asset class can absolutely reach 20 trillion, 50 trillion, or even 100 trillion in the coming decades. I just don't think it happens before 2030. Even the tokenization stats of globally illiquid assets is a 16 trillion business opportunity, and for Bitcoin to reach 1 million, it would require a market cap of 20 trillion. I'm really just thinking about this Bitcoin halving and the next one because eventually the Bitcoin halving or the total supply will be in circulation. And will there really be a huge demand for Bitcoin if there's a variety of other protocols and everything's digital in the future and running on DLT? And one last point before we dive into the price charts, market cap is nothing but a social construct. When you see a market capitalization of Bitcoin of 900 billion, if everybody were to sell, there is not $900 billion liquid in that asset. It's actually far less. I'd be curious what the percentage is because JP Morgan did a study back in 2018. So when you see a $900 billion market cap, in reality, what if there's only 70, 50, or even 20% of that amount actually liquid in that asset? So when we think about that, it actually takes far less money to create a very high market cap or valuation. And last cycle, when Bitcoin created an all-time high price, there were some assets that reached market capitalizations, altcoins, between 50 to even 99 billion like ADA. And those alts had a much higher rate of return. Okay, looking at the Bitcoin price chart on the monthly time frame. An all-time high price is not that crazy from current prices. We only require about a 50% move to the upside. The only concern is Bitcoin has already moved over 200% wick to wick. And historically, looking at the previous cycles, an all-time high price was always hit when the Bitcoin RSI on the monthly time frame pierced 70 into overbought. Next bear market, the RSI pierced again, all-time high price. So we're getting there, but the Bitcoin price chart is not cleared past this previous level of resistance where we rejected during the retracement last cycle. And from there, we had a big rejection delaying the actual bull run. Now, measuring the lengths of the previous two cycles, this cycle from 2013 to 2017 took over 1,200 days, from the peak of its monthly RSI or momentum until it broke into a new all-time high price. Our last cycle in 2017 to 2020, measuring from the peak of the RSI until we broke into a new all-time high price, took 1,096 days. If we did the same thing and measured from the peak of the RSI, not the all-time high price where there was bearish divergence, we can see 1,218 days, looking at the length of one of the longest cycles back here and just measuring that and seeing what that would look like. If the Bitcoin price chart followed what we did in this previous cycle, we would get an all-time high by July of this year. If we followed this cycle, that would be an all-time high by March of this year. But these two previous cycles had the RSI measured with their all-time high price or the top of the market, and this cycle is a bit different because we had bearish divergence. So let's also measure from the all-time high price of Bitcoin around 69K. Using the longest cycle, that would take us to March of 2025. Now we're on the Bitcoin price chart on the weekly time frame going back to the very beginning. During a bull run, we've historically always held above this 21-week EMA or exponential moving average, as you can see. Next bear market, we'll go to the next bull run, and we can see Bitcoin held this level for support all the way up. Right there, right there, right there, candle bodies, wick, wick, candle bodies, all the way up. Let's take a look at 2020, seeing something very similar, but the 2016-2017 cycle was super clean. So we can see we had the Bitcoin halving in May of 2020, and we maintain above this level for support during the bull run. We've held above it and used it as support with candle bodies a few times, but broke below, but then got back above, and we're maintaining above this level thus far. And the Bitcoin price chart still has some open fair value gaps below as well as above. We've had others that actually got closed perfectly right there, as well as right there, that wick, and then going to that next wick, and that got completely filled, that imbalance right there. So we've respected these weekly fair value gaps thus far. I'm keeping tabs on 52,000 and 60,000. We're nearing the Bitcoin halving, but we have a very large buy-side imbalance below, between 30,000 to 34K, as well as an open CME gap at 20,000. We even have an open CME gap below 10,000. Now, not every single gap gets filled, but it's something that I keep in mind. And this CME gap can be seen on the ticker BTC1 ! And looking at the Fib retracements, we're entering a very, very key level. We've gotten very close to the 618 Fibonacci retracement before the halving. In 2016, during the 2017 run-up, we also wicked up to the 618. And in 2019, we also reached the 618 as well before a huge rejection. And here are a few other looks of Bitcoin today on the left, and then we have the 2016 cycle during the retracement to the 618. Once it reached the 618 Fibonacci retracement, we rejected, and we can see the RSI cut right back down, before later climbing to an all-time high. But this is the main concern everybody's paying attention to. We have today, 2024, and we have 2019 on the right. I plotted a horizontal line right there where the RSI rejected in 2019 at 66.21. That's a level I want to see the Bitcoin monthly price chart break through. This is a level where we often get rejected. So that level at 66.21 all the way across has been a key level where we rejected back in 2019. Also similar rejections in this zone back here. So this was support, this level was resistance. We can see finally breaking through. This level was resistance. Another tap of resistance right there, and now we're approaching this zone again. Now I'm going to play a 5-minute clip off Coin Bureau's YouTube channel, and I'm going to link this or add a card to this video so you can watch the full thing. I may not be able to share this clip, but it's super important, and I highly recommend watching this full interview if you can. So I might have to trim this clip out. And in this interview, we have Raoul Pal, and he explains something very interesting related to the Bitcoin halving dates, also being the same years of the US elections for the presidential elections. And election years typically result in economic stimulus in tandem with a business cycle or the debt refi cycle that he explains.
So if you don't pay the interest on the debt, what did they do? They all refied all of their debt. So it's 100% of GDP in debt. So all economic growth essentially goes to paying off the interest payments on the debt. So what you need to do is lower the interest costs of the debt. They did that, and every government reset their debt to 3 to 5 year. That 3 to 5 year cycle is the debt refi cycle. It's exactly how the economy has been working. So you come into year 4, it's the down year. That's when the economy slows because rates have gone up because they have to try and refi. What happens is rates then fall. They use the balance sheet, and they use the balance sheet to pay off the interest of the previous cycle. And I've kind of proven that out over time. That 4-year cycle is exactly the same as the Bitcoin halving cycle. Why? Because Bitcoin came in 2008. It's also the same as the presidential election cycle. Why? Stimulus, right? They're all the same thing. So it is the most observable economic environment of my 30-odd year career. And it's so obvious what 2024 and 2025 are, and that's more stimulus. They're going to be cutting rates. If they screw it up and inflation does go up, they will use yield curve control, which is printing of money, to maintain interest rates, which Japan has been doing. But generally speaking, it's a year of stimulus. In a year of stimulus, as investors, we need to say, okay, what's going to create the biggest opportunity set? The multiplier on all of this is crypto. It always outperforms all other assets, particularly in these moments. And crypto, again, is such a beautiful thing. This won't last forever, but it's a gift for us because you get 3 years where it's the best performing asset on earth. That's through macro crypto spring, summer, fall. Crypto macro winter, when the downside of the debt refi cycle comes, it's the worst performing asset price on earth. And we just keep repeating. The lows are higher. It's just an exponential, logarithmic trend that keeps going because of adoption. So the other thing to bear in mind about 2024, 2025 is, okay, we've now built the ETF, which I think of as a trade deal between crypto land and fiat world. It's not immigration into crypto land because these people are using centralized counterparts to do this, as opposed to myself, who will use my ledger device for self-storage. But we're going to bring a lot of FDI, foreign direct investment, and tourism income into crypto land. Huge amounts of it because of the stimulus and the fact that it's the best returning asset price on earth. So we've got that to also ignite this crypto economy. On top of that, Tim and many VCs like him have piled money in 2020 and 2021. 67 billion went in. That money has been building applications layers, infrastructure layers, all sorts of stuff. Right? A lot of this will come to market. Some of it doesn't. Some of it failed in the down cycle, but there's a lot of stuff coming to market. And so how I look at this is this cycle, as we go from 516 million wallets to I think 1 billion and beyond in this cycle alone, that it's going to be an everything, everywhere, all at once cycle. All of the kindling is in place. The banks, all the asset management firms are both investors, but are also building on blockchain rails, all of them. So whatever Jamie says, and I've spoken to him directly about this, that he's wildly interested in this space, and they will, JP Morgan, Goldman, everybody are building on these rails.
So I thought that was really interesting to consider the election dates being economic stimulus years in tandem with the Bitcoin halving dates. So the Bitcoin halving dates, 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024. And the Bitcoin halving dates here are in these purple circles with the election date in November that very same year, right there. We also have right there November, and then right there. So if we simply look at some of the best performing years for the crypto asset class, it was tied closely to the presidential elections in 2012, 2016, and then 2020. So this has occurred 1, 2, 3 times in a row, and it's about to occur for a 4th time, with the Bitcoin halving in April and the elections in November this same year. Another thing I think is super interesting, it could just be a coincidence, but Crypto Crew University, I believe his name is Steve, and here's his video if you want to watch this full thing. He reviews this 5.3 theory, and he's been sharing this for a very long time. I believe I found out about it last year. And basically, he discovered that Bitcoin is having diminishing returns by a factor of 5.3. So basically, he's measured 3 or 4 cycles where this worked out perfectly, and it shows you the Bitcoin top. Now, this could be coincidental. I don't know how he discovered this 5.3 or dividing it by, but it's super interesting, and it's something I'm keeping my eyes on. And here's his video, Everyone is Wrong About Bitcoin 100K. So this is Bitcoin on the monthly. You can see this huge impulse over 60,000%, so 60,911. He takes the percentage move and divides it by 5.3. I have no idea why this 5.3 number works. If you guys know, please let me know. So when you divide this impulse percentage by 5.3, you get a new number around 11,400. And what he does is measures that 11,400% move from the cycle low to the top. And this has accurately showed the top of Bitcoin 3 or 4 times. So I'll try to show a super quick example using the cycle low of last bear market until its all-time high price. So right around 2,100% or 2,100. Now we would divide this by 5.3. And once he gets that number, he applies it to the cycle low that we have thus far, assuming that's the bottom, and applying that 396% to 415% to map out the next Bitcoin top. So maybe I didn't measure it as well. I have 396%, which shows about 76,000. And then he, I believe, did 2,200 divided by 5.3. And you get about 415%. So 415% from the cycle low would take you very close to 80K. And I do think that's pretty interesting, around 76 to 80,000 as a Bitcoin top, because I know a lot of people would be expecting 100,000 as the psychological level. But I wholeheartedly believe in the potential of Bitcoin reaching 100,000 or even 150K. Notice the 127 is around 80K and the 1618 is right around 100K. And the highest monthly R3 we have is around 88K. We've already talked about this, and I've shared this on Twitter many times, comparing these cycles. Once a full weekly candle, the wick and the entire body closes above the 50%, we've historically always gone to all-time highs. Notice here we just had wicks below, even candle bodies closing on the 50% Fibonacci retracement as resistance, never getting above. We can see thus far this has been the first candle with wick above this level, so this could be our first weekly close. I'll believe it when I see it. Another thing related to a bull run where I hold a lot of alts and I want alts to do well is considering the previous alt seasons in 2017 and 2021 quarter 1. We're seeing diminishing returns. Bitcoin's dominance at one point in 2017 was 95% of the entire crypto market. It then did a 60% crash, creating one of the largest bull runs in history. The next substantial alt season, Bitcoin dominance dropped from 70% all the way down to 39%. This is a 44% drop. So we're seeing 60%, 40% diminishing as well. So one thing I'm looking for, and I really hope it's in 2024, is to see where the Bitcoin dominance is going to top out at and do that big drop. The previous drops for Bitcoin dominance were between 35 to 39%. If Bitcoin dominance dropped from 50% or 60% down to these lows around 39%, that's still well over a 20% drop. We also have open gaps on the Bitcoin dominance price chart around 42.9%. Now, the higher Bitcoin dominance goes first, the more potential the percentage drop could be, resulting in alts performing even better. Because as Bitcoin's dominance drops, that dominance, that money, that volume are going into other assets. Another thing I'd like to consider is the Crypto Fear and Greed Index, but we only have history back to 2018. We're at 73 in greed today. Now here's June in 2019 when we rejected the 618 Fibonacci retracement and did a huge crash leading to March 2020. Today we're around 72, so I think it's pretty interesting that the June 2019 retracement, as well as up here at highs when Bitcoin is pushing into a new all-time price, were very close to the same level. June 2019 was actually up to 95, essentially is the same level when Bitcoin is breaking into all-time highs. Next up, we're going to look at the B-vol and compare the previous two cycles when Bitcoin reached a cycle top. So this only goes back to 2016, so we have two cycle tops in December of 2017 for Bitcoin, as well as November of 2021. So this measures the volatility of Bitcoin itself, and we can see we're at 18 today. We have fallen below before, but for the most part, Bitcoin's volatility index during bull runs is between 50 to even over 100. So this is another confluence I'm considering, and I would like to see Bitcoin's volatility get up above 50 like the previous all-time highs. So the question is, does this happen this year or next? The RSI is looking pretty good. Now, something else to also keep in mind is looking at the volume for Bitcoin on the monthly. So there are more and more exchanges, so Bitstamp back in the day had a lot of volume, but as more exchanges have been created, such as Binance that is very popular, a lot of that volume are going to other exchanges. Another consideration is not everything is being traded directly with the US dollar. There are stablecoins like USDT, USDC, and many other assets. So this is Coinbase on the monthly. We had monster candles over 1 million for volume right there, and you can see it right there as I hold over this green candle. During the 2019 retracement, we only got up to 600,000. During this all-time high, we were over 1.1 million for Bitcoin. We saw a huge bounce at our cycle low back in January of last year, over 800,000. Bitstamp, same thing. The volume used to be huge. As more exchanges and stablecoins and other pairs have been created, the volume is relatively low. Even Kraken, looking at previous cycle highs, even retracements up here, the volume was much, much higher. Now we can look at Binance, but we don't have tons of historical data before 2017. So this is Bitcoin versus USDT, the stablecoin, and we can see the volume there, and arguably we've had much more volume in USDT than the previous cycle. So that's great to see, and there are a lot of other exchanges to consider with growing volumes. But if we're to see Bitcoin create an all-time price this year or next year, I want to see a lot more volume. I want to see a big monster green candle, ideally taking out these previous highs of over 9.5 million Bitcoin. Now, we've had a lot of talks about the approval of a Bitcoin spot ETF by some of the largest custodians. And many are speculating, including myself, with the approval of a Bitcoin spot ETF, we could see a nice market move. But we have to at least question if this is already priced in and this recent parabolic rise is to sell the news. But a good amount of Bitcoin investors, if Bitcoin got approved for a spot ETF and did a very large pump, many would be looking at entering Ethereum, Solana, XRP, any other asset that could possibly have a spot ETF in the future. So per multiple cycles, as Bitcoin typically rockets, ETH is usually close behind, so the thought would be a lot of people are going to be rotating their Bitcoin holdings in a nice profit, ideally into Ethereum before it would get another ride. So the main talks I see going around on the news is for the Bitcoin spot ETF to be approved, and then later, potentially in June, for a spot ETF for Ethereum to be approved. But this is all based on only if the Bitcoin spot ETF actually gets approved. And here's the Ethereum price chart. I'm not really going to consider these early days in 2015, but we had a full cycle and a clear bear market, so let's look at it today. So we have the Ethereum price chart on the monthly time frame measuring when the RSI cuts or crosses 70. So during the beginning of last bear market in 2018, near the cycle top, as ETH's monthly RSI crossed back down below 70. And it took roughly 1,034 days until we pierced again, creating another all-time price. Just for comparison, if we were to measure that same measured move of 1,034 days from when we crossed below 70 until we could potentially cross above, that shows us October of 2024. Now we're going to dive into the Bitcoin cycle lengths and compare previous cycles to today. And when we're looking at each of these cycle lengths, yes, you could in theory maybe average out the previous cycles and kind of average that number out to see where that could be. For this example, we're just going to use the longest cycle for comparison. Okay, first up, we're going to measure the past 3 cycles, measuring from the cycle top until the next cycle top or all-time high. So we have 910 days. We have the 2016 cycle, 1,470 days. In the previous cycle in 2020, 1,428 days. If we used the longest cycle that we've had thus far and added it to the Bitcoin all-time high price, that would take us to November of 2025. So anyone thinking that we're still going to be ranging a bit longer until 2025, it makes sense. I just want to emphasize what I shared with the monthly RSI at an all-time high until we broke out, and that would actually show us March of this year to July of this year. Now let's measure the cycle lows until the cycle top. So we had 749 days, and now this cycle, this was essentially a double bottom, so I measured from both of these. We have 847 days to as long as 1,064 days. Now our last cycle low back here until the top took 1,057 days. So these two cycles, both over 1,000 days, are very similar in length. If we measured from this cycle low thus far and used the longest length of 1,064 days, that would take us to October of 2025. And last but not least, let's measure from each Bitcoin halving date until the cycle top. So we have 371, 518, and 546. In theory, we could average these numbers out to see where that would take us, but let's just use the longest one that we've had last cycle of 546 days from the Bitcoin halving until reaching the cycle top. Measuring from the estimated Bitcoin halving date using last cycle's length until we reached a cycle top, that would take us to October of 2025. So considering the cycle lengths, comparing the monthly RSI, the number that we're seeing is 2024 and 2025. For the growth of this asset class, the number of global crypto users today, a lot of people expect us to reach 1 billion users. And this has historically happened in parabolic waves, and we see that huge exponential growth. Looking at Colin's Bitcoin Bull Run Index, I really like this website. This aggregates 9 of the most popular metrics and indicators to look at Bitcoin comparing the previous cycles. So we have 10 plus years of price history, and each cycle low has been in dark green. As you can see, cycle low, cycle low, cycle low. And each Bitcoin cycle top has been in red or very dark red before we near that top, and this has happened at least 1, 2, and 3 times in the past. Notice this cycle top was the first high where the monthly RSI was at its all-time high, so that's why I'm measuring the length of the monthly RSI, and that shows us for 2024. We're almost poking into this orange-like territory up here, and remember during the retracement we never really got to orange, it was primarily yellow. So definitely something to consider. Bottom line, we are nowhere near our cycle top, even if we retrace similar to 2019. I'll be looking at this when it gets to red or even dark red like the previous cycle tops before I'm even considering it to be a cycle top. Another thing I'm considering is what Credible Crypto has been sharing for a very long time, believing that this is going to be the 5th impulsive wave for Bitcoin. So you can check out his YouTube channel right here and also follow him on Twitter. If he has more recent videos covering this, my bad, this is the last one I saw explaining the big picture. Basically, per his counts, the invalidation level is around 13,800, that previous high during the retracement. Provided Bitcoin stays above that level, we're still in the territory to have that potential for a major 5th wave, likely meaning an all-time high price for Bitcoin. Timing the market with a 6-month or even a year-out prediction is nearly impossible. Of course, it's easier if you're on the 4-hour time frame on a price chart to look for those smaller moves in a trend. But the biggest market moves are nearly impossible to actually time perfectly. If you get it right once, you're going to get it wrong again in the future. So I'm absolutely rooting for this to happen, and if it does, Credible Crypto gets 100% full credit. I just want to see the volume and the monthly RSI improve dramatically. I believe this asset class is going to be a major asset class, and I believe in all-time highs. But just considering what we've gone through this bear market with multiple black swans, hacks, FTX, Luna, Celsius, 3AC, I'm trying to be very cautious. Primarily because the Bitcoin RSI needs to get a strong break through that level of 66.21, because last time we rejected it, we even rejected it here back in 2016. Because one crash down to the fair value gaps below would be the path of most pain. So this video is not about making a prediction, this is about trying to show all the scenarios and considerations that I have. If we get a Bitcoin all-time high price this year, I'm looking at a blow-off top scenario where there's going to be a huge crash afterwards. And that's just my opinion. There's a lot of bullish things we're seeing in this asset class, but there's also a lot of bearish concerns. I haven't been buying Bitcoin or any assets that are already up 5 to 10x. I'm primarily focused on alts that are still in accumulation at these lows. I'm really just waiting for price action. I've accumulated throughout this entire bear market, and I'm only DCing into any positions that are still down. Even looking at alts like HBAR, we're still in accumulation. We've shown signs of strength, but we haven't had a clear break and close above these levels. So here's HBAR on the monthly. Basically, I'm waiting to get that strong cross for the monthly RSI above 50 to get back into bullish territory. I want the entire market to experience a bull run like we had in 2017 or 2021, even if there are diminishing returns as the number of alt projects grow. The past few years since C19, lockdowns, everything else, the world's just been going through really dark times, and I want to see some good times come through again, even if they're temporary. The majority of retail investors, including myself, are praying for an all-time high price sooner than later, and I think we're going to find out soon if this cycle rhymes with the previous ones or if we're going to be taking the path of most pain. Be safe out there, guys, and always think for yourselves no matter the opinion of anybody else. The guys you see on the news calling for a $1 million Bitcoin likely have huge exposure and would make a bunch of money. Just as anybody that's extremely bearish, they likely have a cash position and they want to capitalize on any crash. Everybody has to decide the right portfolio allocation for them to also manage risk. I think it's super important as an investor to always have some liquidity on deck with some type of cash position. Whether that's only 10% of your portfolio or maybe even much more if you're extremely bearish. The probability that anybody buys the exact bottom is extremely low. We know liquidations, black swans, these things happen every few weeks or every few months. And at the time it's terrifying, but then after a bull run in hindsight, you realize that it offered an amazing opportunity for long-term positions or even just a DCA. In every passing month, the probability of another all-time high increases, whether you think it's this year or later, if we follow the last 3 to 4 cycles over the past 13 years. So I have my alerts set, and I'll finish up today with a famous investing quote. FYI, it's not from a person that I really like, George Soros, but it's accurate. It's not about if you're right or wrong, but how much money you make when you're right and how much you lose when you're wrong. Huge thank you to all to hit the like button. I hope you found some of this interesting, and I'll catch you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, I'd greatly appreciate if you could hit the like button, let me know your thoughts down below, and my link tree is linked in the top of this YouTube video description, with all links, crypto resources, and discounts. I'll catch you in the next one.